Welcome to the next recording in the series Coming Back to Oneself, in which we're looking at different ways of easily, simply coming back to ourselves in a nourishing way, in a way that will calm the nervous system, that will help our bodies to release and relax at a physical level, and in doing so replenish our energy, calm the mind, and those sorts of things. So this month, I wanted to look at a very simple way of working with the senses to replenish and nourish ourselves. So as an explanation, I'd like to share a little story with you. Many years ago now, several decades ago, I heard a lecture about the brain by a professor called Dr. Dean Black, and he said something that stayed with me over all these years. He talked about the brain being a bit like a light switch. He said, in the same way a light switch can be on or off, but it can't be somewhere in between. He said the brain can be in one of two modes, and he called these modes the mode of fear or the mode of exploring, which I thought was curious at the time. But then he went on to explain that fear mode was basically the mode in which we get into doing things. He said there's always some background fear that will cause us to react, cause us to do, cause us to go into doing rather than being mode. And this, of course, is the mode that both more often than not stresses the body, creates excess tension in the body, can stress the mind, tie our thoughts up in knots, and put us in that very sort of active, achieving, overworking, efforting mode. Whereas the exploring mode, he explained as being the mode of curiosity. And to be curious, we need to engage the senses. And the senses, our sense modalities, don't work in a doing way. They work in a receiving way. Work of the senses is all about receiving whatever there is to receive. Of course, that might be light or colour or sound or smell or taste or sensations of different sorts. But the senses aren't essentially doing something. They're allowing something. They're receiving feedback, food back into the nervous system that stimulates us in a replenishing way, in a nourishing way. So he said what we want to do in terms of this metaphorical light switch is, as far as possible, to be switching into this sensory curiosity, exploring mode, which is really the mode of being rather than the mode of doing. And of course, when we're in being mode or sensory mode, we're in a non-doing mode. We're in a mode that is replenishing. It's calming. It's bringing us essentially into the present moment. And that's where healing and replenishing takes place. That's where clear thinking takes place. It's where intuition takes place, and our ability to connect to everything that's greater than ourselves takes place. So it's a really important place to find. But if you're anything like me and most human beings, it's so easy to switch the mental switch into doing mode, into that busy mode. And then, like the hamster running on the wheel, it's sometimes difficult to get off, sometimes difficult to even know we're running on the metaphorical wheel. So to have some tools that enable us to switch from doing to being can be really useful. And we don't need to go into hours of meditation or complicated, I don't know, mantras, affirmations, whatever it is you might do. We can simply start utilizing our sensory system to make a big change to how we experience ourselves. So I'd like to spend a few minutes talking you through some sensory activities, which we're going to do in the main with our eyes closed. We're going to start sitting, and at some point I might invite you to stand. And when you come to standing, you might keep your eyes closed initially as you do that. So first of all, before you close our eyes, just take a moment or two to check in with yourself and just notice how you're feeling right now. You might be already nice and calm and centered, but if you've come from a busy day or doing a particular piece of work to meet a deadline or whatever, you might not be in quite such a calm, centered state. So just check in with how you feel right now. Take a moment or two as you sit, just noticing the sensations in your body, noticing the background qualities of tension or remnants of stress or tiredness. Notice how your muscles feel, just briefly, just having a little overview. And notice how you feel mentally and emotionally. And then very simply, as you get yourself comfortable, however you'd like to sit, close your eyes and begin to tune into your sitting position. Just noticing how you feel in this moment. And if you want to shift your position or change the position of your feet or any other part of yourself, just go ahead and do that so that you're comfortable. And then, regardless of whether your mind is busy whirring away in overdrive, or whether you're very calm and quiet internally, however you are right now, just allow your awareness to come to yourself. Having the sense that you allow your awareness to move away from everything you've been involved with so far today. Bringing it back towards yourself. Bringing it all the way back into yourself. So that you can begin to feel whatever there is to feel within your body. And one thing that's really important that I'd like to mention at this stage is that as I invite you to feel, or to notice, or to observe yourself, please allow yourself to do that free from judgment. It would be lovely to create a space where we leave the judgments and the analysis of how we are outside of the door. And for these moments, we stay with pure awareness. Just coming to meet ourselves. Noticing the more obvious sensations that arise in your body. And opening your mind to begin to be aware of the more subtle sensations. And to help with this process of bringing awareness to oneself, I'm just going to talk you through a few points. So you might start by bringing your awareness all the way down to your feet. And I don't know if you have bare feet or socks on, or whether you're wearing shoes. But either way, begin to become aware of the contact the soles of your feet and the underside of your toes have with whatever they're resting on. Just be very curious about whether you can feel your heels right now. Curious about whether you can feel the sides of the soles of your feet, or the pads of your toes, or the balls of your feet. It's not often we allow ourselves to feel the underside of our feet in this way. So be very curious, very intrigued about the contact you can or can't feel. Beginning to notice if you can feel one foot more than the other. And being intrigued about the sort of footprint that each foot might be making on the floor. Are they the same shape and the same depth? Or are there differences? And can you feel the contact of all 10 toes? Or are some of your toes seemingly missing? You might like to just wiggle your toes a little. Just scrunch them up and release them so that you create some additional sensations. And then see if that changes anything, whether you can feel all 10 toes. And be curious about any other sensations that may be coming into your feet right now. Maybe you can feel the temperature of the floor, or whatever your feet are resting on. Be very curious about whether the temperature is the same under your right as under your left foot. Be curious about whether you can feel the contact of any clothes against your feet or maybe your ankles. You feel the texture of maybe a trouser leg or of some socks, or the weight of the material as it rests against your feet or ankles. Or maybe you just feel the temperature of the air. And then in a very similar way, begin to bring your awareness to your sitting bones or to that part of your pelvis that's contacting the chair. Maybe you can feel two knobbly bones, your sitting bones that you're actually balancing on. Or maybe the greater senses of your buttocks or your thighs, or maybe your pelvic floor. So again, just be curious about how it is for you right now. What contact can you feel between the chair and your body? Begin to notice the very precise areas of contact, the bony areas. The weight of your torso right now will be dropping down through the bony contact, connecting you, dropping you down into the support of the chair. And this creates some quite strong sensory feedback. So just tune into that and notice the exact areas of bony contact. You might even imagine that whatever contact you sense is just making an impression in the top of the chair, the seat of the chair. You might begin to notice any sensations arising around this contact. Maybe you're receiving feedback about the firmness of the chair. Or if you're sitting on a cushion, maybe the softness of the chair. Or maybe you can feel the texture of the surface that you're sitting on. And you can begin to become curious now about whether the weight distribution is even between the right side of your pelvis and the left. Is there a little more or a little less weight dropping through your right side as through your left, or vice versa? Or is it completely even? may begin to draw your awareness up through your body, all the way up towards your head. And we're going to change the focus to listening. So being very curious now about the sounds that you can hear around you. You might initially focus on the more obvious sounds. These may be the sounds that are closest to you, or simply loudest. So allow your ears to open like two big receiving pads, just magnetizing all the sounds that are around you and receiving them, allowing them to flow into your nervous system to feed and nourish the sensory part of your mind. Becoming intrigued to begin to hear not just the louder or more obvious sounds, but to also include now some of the quieter sounds, or the sounds that are further away. Opening your ears to receive the sounds that may be behind you or above you, or way, way outside the room, or even outside of the house or building that you're in right now. Receiving the sounds that you may ordinarily hear but not register. Being intrigued by the sounds that you never knew were there. And being curious to begin to hear the sound of silence. The spaces in between the sounds. And as you open yourself more and more to the sounds close and far, the sounds that surround you, the sounds that you never heard before, you may also now become curious about whether you can hear the sound of your breath. Maybe there's a moment when you can just hear the air as it first enters the end of your nostrils. Or maybe there's a sound as your breath leaves your body. Or maybe there's no sound. Just be curious and notice how this is for you right now. As you listen for your breath in this way, you may also begin to notice the movement that your breath causes within your body. Beginning to notice the parts of yourself that move as the air comes in and out of your lungs. Maybe you feel your upper ribs moving, or your breastbone. Or maybe you notice your abdomen moving, or your lower ribs, your side ribs. Or maybe what you notice is your nostrils opening or closing slightly, or some other part of you responding. So just allow yourself now to become more and more intrigued by the subtlety of movement that you experience with your breath. Beginning to notice the speed of this movement. Does the speed remain constant? Or does it change with every breath? Or maybe it changes between the in-breath and the out-breath. Be intrigued to begin to notice the rhythm of your breathing. And then you might take one hand and just place your hand on the part of your body that you feel moving the most with your breath. And allow your hand to sense this movement. Really enjoying allowing the skin on the underside of your fingers and your palm to soak up the sensations of this movement. Feeling the speed or the rhythm, the regularity or the irregularity of your breath. And at the same time, allowing this part of your body that's moving to also sense the contact of your hand. Beginning to sense the weight of your hand and the temperature of the contact. The warmth or the coolness. Maybe if you have bare skin on this part of your body, noticing the the texture of your hand. As your hand makes this contact with your body, you might have the sense that you're being with yourself, that you are making a deeper contact with yourself right now, contacting the very core of yourself. So as you feel your hand, and as you feel the movement of your breath, as you listen to the sounds around, as you feel your feet on the floor, just allow yourself to easily and gracefully come out of the chair and up into standing. Hopefully you can do that with your eyes closed. Just for a moment or two, allow yourself to stand with your feet a little way apart from each other, so that we can now feel the whole of ourselves, the whole of our body, from the soles of our feet to the crown of our head. If you want to let your arm have a rest, your hand hang down by your side, please feel free to do that. Having worked now to quieten our nervous systems and to come back to ourselves, you may find it relatively easy now just to tune into the sensations that arise within the whole of your balancing body. Noticing the tiny, almost imperceivable movements that come and go in order that you can balance over your feet. And as you notice the tiny movement sensations, as your body goes in and out of balance, rocking fractionally forwards or fractionally backwards in a very, very tiny, minute way. Just noticing how the different parts of yourself respond. Knees may slightly tighten or loosen, kneecaps may lift or drop. Your weight may come more back onto your heels before coming a little bit more forwards towards your toes. You might notice that your head makes tiny little, possibly wobbly movements, nodding movements. The beautiful thing about activating our sensory system, as we've been doing, is that it brings us into ourselves, into the present moment, and it brings us into this state of being present. And that's the state of being left alone physically, of leaving our bodies alone rather than tightening and holding on. And as our bodies become more released, more left alone, less interfered with, the sensations become more subtle, more refined. So just enjoy whatever tiny refined sensations you're experiencing right now as you stand, leaving yourself alone, enjoying having the time to be present within yourself in this nourishing way. Feeling your feet connecting you to the support of the earth as the rest of you opens into the space around. Listening out to the sounds around and listening in to the internal state of yourself, the inner sounds. And as we gradually bring this to a close, you might notice how you feel right now. We began by just having a little body scan and noticing how we felt, noticing the background qualities. So let's do the same again now, just checking in with, how am I now? Noticing the quality within your nervous system, noticing your mind, noticing your physical self, and noticing overall how you feel. And then from this place, just gradually opening your eyes, beginning to reconnect to the world around you, as if for the very first time. Just seeing what's around you with greater curiosity, taking in the colours and the light, the shadows, the shapes, being intrigued by what you see. Good. So my hope now is that you feel different to how you felt half an hour ago. My hope is that you're feeling calmer, more connected to yourself, more present, and hopefully more nourished. So on this note, I'm going to finish this session for today, and we'll continue next month with some more simple ways of reconnecting to ourselves. So go well, and thank you for joining.